Welcome to NYC Guidebook. I'm your host, Brian E. Denton. You're watching an episode of Walking with Brian. Today, I want to take you on a walk down one of America's most important streets, Wall Street. Let's take a walk.
All right.
Wall Street is just 8 short blocks, but don't let its diminutive size fool you. It's one of the most important streets on the entire planet, serving as a nerve center of the global capitalist order. It's located in the financial district on the southern tip of Manhattan Island, and it runs from South Street on the East River to Broadway, where it terminates at historic Trinity Wall Street Episcopal Church. Accounts vary as to how Wall Street got its name. The most accepted story is that the Dutch colonists erected a wooden palisade along what is now Wall Street in order to keep out the hostile Native Americans and the British. Then, in 1685, surveyors laid out what is now Wall Street along the path of that wooden palisade. By the turn of the 18th century, however, the British had taken over the colony and they paved the road that the Dutch surveyors had laid out. And that is what we have here today. Wall Street. It's also claimed that Wall Street derives its name from the Walloon people, which is the Dutch word for French-speaking persons who settled this land and worked here as farmers. The Dutch word for Walloons is wall, as in Wall Street. No matter how Wall Street got its name, today that name is synonymous with finance, and it's been that way for quite some time. As early as the 18th century, merchants had been gathering around a buttonwood tree in order to exchange securities and other financial instruments in this area. It was a convenient place to gather as it was close to the port and provided a single spot for the city's financial actors to gather. On May 17th, 1792, these traders signed the Buttonwood Agreement, which was an early effort to organize securities trading in New York, and that eventually evolved into the New York Stock Exchange, today the world's largest stock exchange by market capitalization. Wall Street's history hasn't always been so glorious and without blemish, however. In December of 1711, the City Council established New York's first slave market for Africans and Native Americans on the corner of Wall Street and Pearl Street, which is where we're approaching right now. This slave market operated until 1762 and contributed, no doubt, to the economic growth and clout of New York City on a national and global scale. So here at Wall Street and Pearl Street, this would be where the first slave market was in New York City. So aside from finance, Wall Street is also known for its rich architectural history, and there are a few New York City landmarks that I'd like to show you. The first one is just going to be up the street a little bit. All right, here we are at the first New York City landmark on Wall Street. This is 55 Wall Street. Originally built between 1836 and 1841, it served as the Merchants Exchange. It's in the style of the Greek Revival, as you can tell from the Ionic columns here. But you probably recognize this building from such classics as Die Hard with a Vengeance and The Dark Knight Rises. Very beautiful building. "55 Wall Street is located on Wall Street between Hanover and William Street. Next up is 40 Wall Street, originally known as the Bank of Manhattan Trust Building. It's now known as the Trump Building. And if I could do a good Trump imitation, I'd tell you how tremendous, beautiful, believe me, how great this building is. And it really is. It's an example of neo-Gothic architecture. Great skyscraper. For a while it was being built, it was locked into competition for title of the world's tallest building with the Woolworth Building and the Chrysler Building. And actually in 1946, an aircraft jet crashed into it. You can find this building between Nassau and William Street. So down there at the end of the block, you can see Trinity Wall Street Episcopal Church. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So now we're approaching what is, in my opinion, one of the most historically interesting intersections in New York and probably American history. Wall Street and Broad Street. The first building I'd like to talk about here is Federal Hall. This is Federal Hall. Now most of the stuff I'm going to talk about in relation to Federal Hall took place at a previously existing structure. The one you're looking at now was completed in 1842, but there was a structure here before where all this historical stuff happened. The original building served as New York City's first city hall, and it was here that the Stamp Act Congress met to draft its letter to King George III. That was the one where they complained of no taxation without representation. After the Revolution, it served as the Congress of the Confederation, which was the head of government under the Articles of Confederation. With the passing of the Constitution and the establishment of the federal government, however, it housed the first Congress. It was also where George Washington was first sworn in as president, and that's why today you can find a statue of George Washington here. This current building is a very beautiful building, an example of the neoclassical style, and it's worth checking out for sure if you ever come to visit or even if you live here. It's open Mondays through Saturdays, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. All right, across the street, we have another neoclassical masterpiece. This is 23 Wall Street, historically known as the Morgan House. This building is not only the site of countless stories of American financial history, but also of a deadly terrorist attack. On September 16th, 1920, a series of bombs exploded here, killing 38 people and injuring 143. The damage from this bombing, it can still be seen on the facade. Let's go take a look. We'll just have to backtrack a little bit. And here we are, the remaining damage from the 1920 Wall Street bombing. You see a little bit here, and you can see a little bit right here. And then next we have, of course, the New York Stock Exchange, the big board. This is located at 11 Wall Street, and the average daily trading here is in excess of $150 billion a day. Architecturally speaking, it's an interesting building because of its neoclassical design, which you're going to see a lot of in this area. You'll note here the Corinthian columns in contrast to the Ionic columns of 55 Wall Street. Oh, and it looks like they moved this Wall Street girl down here. She used to be opposite the Bull. Here she is. She's probably contemplating her portfolio as she checks out the New York Stock Exchange. So next up is One Wall Street, and this is an example of Art Deco. Really beautiful building. It's currently being renovated and made into a residential building. It'd be great to live here. This is Trinity Wall Street Episcopal Church at the end of Wall Street, at the intersection of Wall Street and Broadway. And here's one Wall Street again. Kind of a better view. So Trinity Wall Street is actually a very interesting example of neo-Gothic architecture in the city, and just a wonderful church if you ever want to come here to visit or to worship. One interesting fact about Trinity Wall Street is that Alexander Hamilton is buried here, and though the gravesite is not technically on Wall Street, it's close enough to include in this walk. So that's where we're going to go now. To get to Alexander Hamilton's gravesite at Trinity Wall Street Episcopal Church, you're going to want to go to Rector Street. Some more at Trinity Wall Street. Gorgeous building. Equally nice inside. And here is the final resting place of Alexander Hamilton. Died July 12th, 1804, age 47. All right, that concludes our walk down Wall Street. Thanks for joining me. I had a great time. I hope you did. If you did, please do a like and subscribe. And let me know down in the comments where you want to go for a walk next. I'll definitely take it into consideration. Until we meet again, I'm Brian E. Denton from NYC Guidebook. Keep walking.